Welcome to the Better Together podcast. This podcasting community, we're inspired by Ecclesiastes 4:9-12, which says, 2 people are better than one. When 2 people work together, they get more work done. If one person falls, the other person can reach out to help. And also Galatians 6:2, which says, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. So I saw a need that wasn't being met, and I created this community and podcast so that people could find community where they could connect, encourage, inspire, and support one another through real life stories, struggles, loss, heartache, and triumphs. Life is messy, and I know how powerful our stories are and how sharing our stories can be healing for us and for those that hear them by giving others hope. My guest for this episode is Michele Davenport. She is an ordained minister, inspirational speaker, evangelist, Bible teacher, author, columnist, podcaster, TV host, and has been a featured guest on both radio and television talk shows. She received her associate degree in Theological Studies from Biblical Life College and Seminary in Marshfield, Missouri. Michele hosts 2 Vertical Hope radio shows on the Christian Mix 106. She also has a podcast called Girls Talk. Michele's first book, Ripened on the Vine, has recently signed a movie option contract with Unveiled Studios out of Vancouver, Canada, with the Kooman brothers. Michele, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, I'm so glad that you're here and for this conversation. So why don't we start with you sharing your story, your testimony?
When I was 4 years old, that was my first memory, and that's usually where our story starts, with our first memory. I was 4 years old when my mom and dad was separated, and my mom had got an apartment for me and my brother and her to live. And one night, my brother was spending the night with his uncle. And one night, I was woken up with a very loud noise, which later found out it was the door that my dad had broken down. He came in, he got me out of bed, and he brought me to in between the dining room and living room, where he made me watch him beat and rape my mom almost to death. That is my first memory of my father, and that's my first memory when I was 4 from that point on. And so after that, my mom, she didn't press charges against him whatsoever, but later on, he ended up getting caught by the police for robbery and ended up going to prison. So he went to prison. They did get a divorce. When he got out, he became one of the leaders in the biggest gang in Corpus Christi, Texas, where he went on to do other things. And my mom ended up remarrying once, got divorced again, remarried again to another guy. She was married 7 times. With the third guy, 11 years old, and went to an amusement park with my friends, where I got abducted there and taken to a ditch inside the amusement park. And he tied me up and molested me until the park actually closed. From there, that marriage did not work out. So then she got married to a drug dealer. My mom, in turn, turned to drugs heavily. She was already doing them, but she really got into them. And then she got into heroin, where that lifestyle just left. I mean, we didn't have visitors come to our door. We had customers, and we had people jumping out of the second story of our home. We had kids from my school would come to my house. Now, I was sober. I didn't do anything then. It was later in life that I got kind of messed up, but it wasn't then. I stayed sober then, didn't do drugs, didn't get into alcohol, because so many people that I would wake up to the next morning, I didn't know if they were alive or dead, or I'd check on them because people would be shooting up and laying around with, rubber around their arms and needles. And it was just that was just kind of felt like that was my responsibility to kind of make sure everybody was still alive the next morning. That whole marriage and that whole thing, that lasted a while. I forgot one part. My mom did marry a really nice guy. His name was Gilbert, and they were married for like 4 years. He was amazing. That was the best 4 years of my childhood. He was amazing. He took us fishing, camping. He taught me how to ride motorcycles. we had like 7 dirt bikes at the time. We'd go dirt biking, camping, fishing, all the things. Unfortunately, he was drinking on the Galveston Bay Wall in a dune buggy, flipped and ended up dying, which was horrible. By then, my brother started doing drugs and wanted to go live with my real dad, biological dad that got out of prison. He went to go live with him. He started doing drugs, went to a bar, tried to sell drugs, running from the police, and he ended up flipping his car and he ended up dying suddenly in that wreck. During all this time, my mom got into a bunch of drugs, and you could see, I mean, she was hurting. My mom was a good mom. She just made a lot of bad choices, right? And then those choices was those marriages that were happening. But after that, that marriage ended up in, I mean, I could just sit here and tell you over and over, just think bad things after bad things, but God. Can I just say that? But God got a hold of me, because a lot of people, when they want to hear my testimony, I'm such a happy person. It's hard for me to just tell somebody so many sad things consistently. I'm saying, but God, that marriage ended out in a shootout. He held us hostage. There was a lot of bad things. If you want to know that whole story, you can read the book or go watch the movie eventually. But just to say the very least, there was a lot of trauma. There was a lot of sexual abuse from my aunt and uncle, date raped by a boy, molested at the amusement park. And there was just a lot of things happening, a lot of bad things happening until I met God. And I mean, my mom took us to church when she was married to Gilbert, the man that died on the Galveston Bay Wall. So I knew there was a God, even though I was very young. I still had that seed sown in me for 4 years, sitting in that little pew at the Methodist church, hearing about Jesus, and I got a hold of that. So even when she was married to the drug dealer and all the things, and he was holding us hostage because he lost drug money, and then the drug people broke in, and it's just so many things. I prayed. I didn't have a real good working relationship with God at the time, but I knew there was a God, and I knew that I prayed he would hear me and he'd answer me. And I prayed that my stepdad would find that lost drug money before he killed us, and he found it in the Bible. My mom had a Bible, and he hid that money in the Bible. And so when I prayed, he came out screaming, "I found the money!" And we were thankful because we got to live another day. But anyway, I found Jesus, and there goes me. I just got all sold out, by myself in my little military home with my Bible while my husband was sleeping. After a friend that came over and told me, more about Jesus. And I just sat there quietly. It gets me all teary-eyed. I just sat there quietly and I said, I need you, And I prayed the sinner prayer. Just remember him coming in my heart. And I remembered I will never be the same. And that's been 30 plus years. And girl, I've never been the same. I've never been happier. I've never been freer. And I've never been the same. So that's some of my story.
Wow. I mean, such a powerful story. Talk more about your book. What inspired you to write your book?
I was on a 21-day fast. After I met Jesus, we stayed in Kansas City for a while. Then we got stationed to California. And while I was there, I felt there was a pulling on me. And I knew God wanted something from me, but I didn't know what. And I knew that fasting and prayer could bring that, because in the Bible it says fasting and prayer, some of these things don't come out. Besides you do this. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to fast and pray. And so I did for 21 days. And I can't tell you how long into the fast, I'm going to say a week or so into the fast, the Lord said, I want you to write your testimony. Well, girl, I didn't even get my baby toe, toe into the 10th grade door. Like I said, they were all into drugs. They were doing drug runs and they were leaving me. And I quit school before I got into 10th grade, but barely, And so they would, like I said, go do drug runs and stuff. And it just got to be too much. All the pain, all the hurt, all the dysfunction. I just couldn't focus anymore. I mean, my mom would just come to the school and be strung out on heroin, running the halls, screaming my name. It got to be too much. And so when Jesus called me to write my book, I was just like, there was 80% of me, I just was like, yes, because I know I was fasting. It resonated. I knew he wanted something, and that was the something. And so it resonated with me. There was a percent of me going, English is my worst subject. Okay. Math comes second, and you want me to number pages and chapters and write a book and all English, all numbers. So I was just like, okay. But he reassured me, I'm calling you. I'm going to equip you. I didn't tell you to edit your book. I told you to write your book. And I thought, okay. And so I wrote it just like I talk. My name's Michele. And I wrote the whole book and put a period. I'm just like, that's how I wrote. But I remember asking my husband, how do I get to a piece of paper on this computer? Like, I knew nothing about computers. I'm thinking it's a typewriter piece of paper. Do I put it in there? And I ended up writing the book by hand and going back and typing it. But 4 chapters in the book, which is amazing. 4 chapters in the book, I got a phone call. And it was from my dad got married. Eventually got out of prison, got married. That's when my brother went to go live with him and then died. Okay. I got 4 chapters into my book, and the last sentence I wrote is, and I forgive my father. Okay. Because that's not the only thing. I mean, he did so many things. I got a phone call that night from my stepmom, and she said, your dad suddenly died of an aneurysm. He's gone. And I mean, I collapsed. You would have thought I lost my best friend. I collapsed. I screamed. I cried. And I now understand I lost the opportunity to heal that. Even though I forgave him, there was no reconciliation as far as us talking or anything. That opportunity was gone now. And so I mourned that because I didn't have a relationship with him. So here's something that God did after that. He started downloading poems in me. I'd be in the shower and I'd be screaming at my husband, write this down, because God would be speaking it and I didn't want to forget it. And I wrote down 13 poems, right? So directly after my father died, we got orders to be stationed in Tennessee. We moved to Tennessee. I stopped writing. We were there about 9 months. It took us a while to find a church, but we finally did. It just so happens when we found this church, they were called to a 21-day fast. So, of course, I'm jumping on board and I'm fasting. And the Lord reminded me of that book. Well, I was like, okay. So I go to the computer because I'd written it in a book, but then I go back and type it because I could think a lot faster than I could type. Yeah. So I'd write it and then type it. So I go back and we couldn't find it. 4 chapters were absolutely gone. I mean, they were done. There was no way we could find it. And the Lord said, that's purging. That was never meant to be read by anybody. That was so I could heal you. And so I was like, okay, because really the first 4 or 5 chapters are really pretty devastating of the book. And then it goes on just how God walked us through trials of living in life, the current life. But so I'm on that 21-day fast, and I'm like, and the Lord said, he reminded me of the book. I went to find it. It's gone. He said that was purging. So I started writing, and I don't know how many pages, maybe 30 or 40 pages in. I said, Lord, what's the name of these chapters? I mean, how do I divide them? I'm just writing all this stuff. And he said, those poems, the 13 poems I gave you in California, are the heading of each chapter of the book. Do not put them in there. I got specific. Now, for those of you that I heard this. I heard it. Do not put it anywhere. When you're done writing, you'll see where they go. So I wrote the book and then placed, and each poem represents what's in the chapter, which I could not have done that. There's no way I could have manipulated that all around. But each chapter, when you read the poem before you read the chapter, it will tell you what the chapter's about in that poem. It's the most amazing thing ever. But during that process, I'm going to try to speed this up some. During that process, I was sitting by the fire and just praying. I wasn't writing, and I was looking through a magazine. I prayed, and then I started looking through a magazine, and there was a poetry contest, and the Lord said, enter it. I said, okay, which poem? And I got my 13 poems. This is a new one. So I get my pen and paper, and I'm like, okay, Lord. And I wrote this whole poem down. And I entered it into this poetry contest, and it won. And it got published in the Blossom of the Dawning. I still have the book here. And And the poem is called Ripened on the Vine. And it became the name of the book. So I knew that I was going to have 14 chapters, and I knew the name of the book would be Ripened on the Vine. And that's how that book all came about.
That's incredible. How did that book go from being a book to now a movie?
Okay, so that's 2 decades later. Just so you know, I'm not saying that people out there writing it's going to take them 2 decades. Maybe the Lord need to grow me up some. I don't really know what the problem was there, but I know that He spoke it into my heart when I wrote it that it was going to become a movie. And 2 decades later, and that's a long story in itself. So I'm just going to stick with the producer I have right now. I was working with this guy named Paul Griffin. He knew this producer named Daniel Kooman and his brothers, Matthew and Andrew, from Unveiled Studios out of Canada. And he wanted me to meet him. And so we did a Zoom, and Daniel loved the story. And he said, I really, really think people need to hear this story. And it's just a story of forgiveness. It is just a Mark 11:25. When you stand praying, if you hold anything against anyone, forgive them so that your Father in heaven can forgive you. Mm-hmm. That is the book. It's a walk through forgiveness. It's about forgiveness. It's being washed by the water of the Lord, which that's what the movie's called, is Washed by Water. And Daniel got a hold of the vision. And so he started working on the screenplay, and we held a gala, and then he's just produced a movie called Daniel, the actual movie Daniel, that will be out in August. And they raised, I think, 1.5 million, maybe over, for that movie. So that'll be out, and that's exciting. But then we're going to really focus on Washed by the Water now.
That's
yeah.
Congrats on that. That's a huge accomplishment. Let's kind of segue. So this podcast is about building community. So
yeah.
Why is building community important?
I really thought about this question because I know some of the typical answers, but I was thinking, why would it be important to me, and why is it important to me? Mm-hmm. Women and men alike need to know they're not alone. They need to know they're not alone. So when I tell my story, there might be somebody listening today that felt like I did way back then, that I was broken beyond repair, that I was damaged goods, that nobody would ever want me because of what was done to me. Not because I went out there and just sabotaged myself. By the way, there's nothing you can do to yourself or anybody does to you that you're damaged beyond repair, or that people don't want you, or that God doesn't want you. So let's just make that clear. But it doesn't void the fact that that's the way I felt. I felt damaged. I felt like, who would want me? This is horrific stuff that was thrust against me in my body. And I'm so broken and damaged. Who is going to want me? And I believe community does this. It forms a group of people that may not have all gone through the same thing, but all gone through something. And they can relate. Because even though maybe somebody didn't get abducted at an amusement park, but maybe they did get molested by an uncle or an aunt or a dad or a brother or whoever, a neighbor. And they hear my story and they go, I'm not alone. And if this woman can be healed, and she can have joy, and she can go on to write books and speak and movies and whatever. And I'm not saying everybody's called to do that, but if she could go on to cook, if she could go on to get married, you go on to have children, it just be everyday life. It doesn't have to be anything, just everyday living. If she can make it through that and actually be joyful and love the Lord and love people, then there's hope for me. That I'm not so broken, so damaged that nobody wants me.
Oh, yes, I love
that. So that's community for me in a nutshell.
Speaking of broken and damaged, you're a survivor of sexual abuse. I'm a survivor of sexual abuse. And we are often labeled as broken and damaged goods.
Yeah.
And it's a societal view of us that causes even more damage. I mean, for those that look at people that way and think they have less worth, or for those that have been made to feel like they have less worth because of something that was done to them. What more can you say on that?
There's nothing that can be done to me or that I've done to myself that's going to change who I am in Christ. There's nothing. There is absolutely, like, if I could say one thing, that's what I'd say, because there's nothing that you've ever done or that I've ever done. I cannot stand somebody say, well, if she wasn't where, look, she's asking for it. Now, there's not very many people in my circle now that would ever say that, but I remember that being said. And when I was in a totally different circle, and no woman deserves it.
Right.
No woman deserves it. Like, I don't care. Like I said, I believe in modesty, but if you're wearing your shirt you don't deserve to be raped. That is just absurd that people would say that. It's just one of my pet peeves. I hate it. But this is exactly what I'd say to that person. No matter what's been done to you or what you've done to yourself, it will never change who you are in Christ. That's never going to change. Jesus is going to look at you the same. No matter what, his lenses don't change with you. No matter what. It's not going to change who you are in Christ. And I would say to this, don't allow that to happen. Don't allow what happened to you to change who you really are in Christ. Right?
I love that. Good point. The police do that a lot with their questioning.
Yeah.
What were you wearing? It's an automatic of what they were wearing. Somehow it's their fault. And the shame and guilt that comes with that over something they didn't choose to do. Even for those that might be at the wrong place at the wrong time, or might be hanging with the wrong people, and something happens.
Right.
Just because you were at the wrong place at the wrong time, or just because you were hanging with the wrong people, does not justify anyone violating you in that way. But our society has come to this place where they're so quick to want to blame someone, and they always usually blame the wrong person, not putting any accountability on the perpetrator who committed the crime.
Right. Yeah, when that happened to me and I'm going to just piggyback off what you're saying, because when that happened to me as a young girl, 11 years old at the amusement park, I told you they closed the park down. He tied me up, took me to a ditch behind the gold mine, which was shut down at the time. There was a place for him to take me, number one. He posed as a police officer. I believed him. I went with him, and that happened to me. Okay. He molested me until the park closed. Okay. Then he left. He had tied me up. He left. And he said, count to 100 and you can be free. Why he didn't kill me, I have no idea, because I was not his first victim. He did this to hundreds. He posed as superintendent of schools, police officer at amusement park. That was what he did. He was a professional at what he did. He knew exactly how to get you to go. He knew what child to pick out of a place was packed. How would he know how to pick me? But he did. And how did he know? I mean, how did he know I would say yes? I'll go with you. I'll help you, whatever. And I gave him my phone number and my home phone number and my address, because he said, I want to confirm it. And I said, I thought you talked to my mom. He said, well, I did. I just want to make sure I've got, the right person. But I'm 11, so no judgment. Okay. So I'm just thinking, not from you. I'm just saying from anybody, because I thought he was a police officer. I flashed a badge, and I'm 11. I'm thinking I'm helping him. But when the park closed down, I literally had to follow the screams of the mother of the girl that I went with, because she didn't go with him. She said no. Her and our other friend, we had a little guy friend with us, and we were just dropped off at 11. Back in those days, that's what you did, But I followed the screams. That's how I found my way out of there, because the mother was screaming. But let me tell you, the police quickly ushered me away, got me away from the crowd, because there was a big commotion going on. And all they did was take a description of, the man that did this, and then offered to drive me home. So I learned fairly quickly that I don't know that I could trust that whole, he did get picked up. They did pick him up. He escaped. it's just, that's a whole story. He escaped, but then they found him. He was on the loose, and then I thought he was going to find me because I gave him my address, and then my stepdad thought it would be funny because we had 2 phones in the house, so he thought it'd be funny if he called me and said he's watching me, acting like he's a perfect. Yeah, they end up getting a divorce. You can clearly say why. He was a perpetrator too. So I was living in that house, so that's all another whole thing. But anyway, they got divorced. But so I learned early on, that I don't know how much that was so secretive to get me away, because Astroworld didn't, I mean, they're closed now, so I can say the name, but they didn't want any publicity. They didn't want anything to be known. The police kind of ushered me here and all hidden. So when my aunt and uncle raped me and I got date raped, I didn't go to the police because I was like, what?
Yeah.
Who's going to believe me?
Right. And I think that's really important to talk about, is that you mentioned, how did he know who to choose? And we had kind of talked about how it's like sharks, blood in the water. The predators know who is going to be an easier victim to convince, because, and what I think a lot of people don't understand is, like, they hear that someone's been harmed, and then if they're harmed again, they're like, how this happened again? And it's like, you don't understand that once someone's harmed, and like that foundation, that barrier has been infiltrated in some way, the barrier is broken down, it's so much easier for someone to gain access, because those walls aren't as sturdy as they were, because they've been knocked down before. And that's what predators are looking for. They're looking for someone, like, it's just like sharks and blood in the water. And I think with your story, it's a really important, because I mean, how many times have, like, we heard stories of someone making a comment like, why would you go with them? Why would you do this? Why would you? But it's so easy. Like, you want to think the best of people. He was in a police uniform. You're thinking he's legit. And again, maybe parents need to be having more conversations with children of the dangers of what people can be saying to their kids, because they are going to think that the coach is safe, and they're going to think that the police officer's safe, and that the teacher's safe, and that family member is safe. But what we've learned in our world, they're not always safe. And so if you're not having conversations and they're thinking they're safe, things can happen. And again, don't be shifting blame on the child or the woman of, why did you do this? Were you with them? Why did you listen to them? You're putting the blame on the wrong person. The question should be, why did you think it was okay to harm someone in this way? Why did you think it was okay to destroy someone's life? Like, why? Put it on them. I think there just needs to be more conversations, and I think people are so scared of having these conversations, because it's like, I don't want to let kids know that this is happening. It's like, but if you don't, the wrong person will, and it will be too late.
I just say the buddy system. I just say, it's just, you've got to be careful, because the aunt and uncle that raped me, my mom helped raise her, and she let her husband, the aunt's husband, and the aunt live with us. So that's how they got a hold of me when I was a baby. And then and of course I had no memory of that. And then, so I just adored this aunt and uncle, and they were moving off to Las Vegas, and they asked for me to spend a night. I said, sure. And, and then that's when it happened. So, and that was my aunt and uncle, and I adored them. So for this to happen was just, devastating, because I absolutely adored them and would have never thought they were going to come in and hurt me while I was sleeping, So you just have to, you do need to teach your children, stranger danger, but also not just stranger danger. Okay. Cause it could be your family member. Okay. And I'm not trying to put fear out there, but I am trying to give you wisdom from a person that's came from being abducted by a stranger danger from the amusement park, but then also was molested and raped by my aunt and uncle when I was a baby and teenager. and then date raped by a guy I lived with. Now, before anybody says anything about that, because I understand that when you live with someone, you're probably having sexual relationships. I get it. Okay. But no is no, no matter what. I don't care if you're married. I don't care if you're living with somebody, if you're dating somebody, if you're courting them, if you're engaged. I don't care what your situation is. If the woman says no, it is no.
Oh, yeah.
And it is rape if you do it anyway. So it's black and white. There's no gray. There's absolutely no gray in this conversation for that. A woman says no, it's no, period.
Yeah.
And I did repeatedly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's important, because that goes to consent. And, if they can't give consent, it's no.
Yeah.
And
if they're passed out drunk, it's no. And I'm not condoning
or under
it,
the
but I'm
influence
saying,
and not passed
or
out
under.
drunk.
Yeah.
Or, the moment it's like, I don't want to do this, that's no.
Yeah.
That's no.
Or if a woman's pushing you back, because she can't get the words out for whatever reason, intoxicated, whatever, or just fear, or whatever the thing is. If she's pushing you back, that's no. If there's resistance, that's no. It's just no.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe that that any of them damaged me forever. I believe God restored and picked up the broken pieces and put it back so beautifully. I have forgiven each person. And when I say this next sentence, people cringe. And I don't care. Cringe. But this is my heart. I understand grace deeply. And I understand a vision that the Lord gave me about forgiveness, because I can't tell you all of this and get off this podcast without saying this part, because this to me is the most important part of a conversation of this sorts. And a lot of people don't want to hear it, but it is the most important part. And I remember the Lord giving me a vision over a decade ago, and he showed me a battlefield, and he said, Michelle, I know you'll get your mom off that battlefield, because where battlefields are, there's wounded, right? So he showed me this battlefield, and there's wounded people everywhere. And he said, I know you'll get your mom off, but will you get the man that molested you in the ditch? And I'm sitting there with tears flowing. And I said, yes, Lord. And the Lord said, because he's my son. Now, people don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that. Just like when you paint, they don't want to see your destruction in paint. They want to see hope. They want to see something beautiful. But I'm telling you, that's forgiveness. That's why the Lord showed me the battlefield. That's why he was on it, because he was wounded. Because he was wounded, he wounded. I'm not saying that gives him a license to do it. I'm not saying there's not consequences for your sin because he went to prison. I'm not saying that it's reconciliation. Forgiveness is not always reconciliation.
Right.
Sometimes it's just forgiveness, and you go on and move on with your life. And sometimes it's reconciliation. You forgive and you reconcile. This was not the case. There's going to be times in your life that you forgive by faith because you know God wants you to forgive. Even Matthew 6:14 says, forgive and you'll be forgiven. If you don't, you won't. And then I just told you Mark 11:25 about when you stand praying. I mean, there's scriptures all over. Job went through the horrificness, lost everything. In the very last chapter, Job forgives. He says, I can truly see now. He goes, I've only heard of you, Lord. But now that I went through all this, I can see now. And the Lord told him to forgive. And then he gave him a double portion of everything he lost. So it's very important for me to say that I do want to hug that man. I hope he's in heaven. I want to hug him. And I don't know what he went through, but I have compassion for him. Even though he hurt me, I still have compassion for him. Because once the Lord pointed out, this is my son, I'm like, okay. Yes, that's forgiveness. Yeah, God wants you healed, but he also wants the man on that battlefield healed. Even though you're his daughter and he hurt you, but he still wants his son healed. Jesus went to that cross selflessly, not selfishly. He forgave people that did all this and he did nothing.
In regards to forgiveness, because it seems like this is a kind of a sticky situation topic.
It is. It is.
Especially within the church.
It is. Maybe.
A lot of times people think that forgiveness means there's no justice, or you can't ask for justice, or that you can't ask for accountability, or there can't be consequence because you need to forgive and you need to focus on forgiving. I know so many victims and survivors that have been told, you're talking about your story, so evidently you're not healed and you haven't forgiven. And it's like, that's not an indication of there
It's
not being
not.
forgiveness or
It's not.
healing.
Yeah.
But
Or if you forgive, I've heard this, if you forgive and then you forget, really? I all of a sudden get amnesia because
yeah.
I mean, how do you forget something that happened to you as a child like that? How do
No.
you forget? But you know what? How I look back on it is different.
Yes.
How
Absolutely.
I look back on it is different. Now I see the man in the ditch with me that's hurting. Not only hurting me, but he's hurting.
Yeah.
So now I look at the aunt and uncle that chose to molest me when I was a baby and rape me when I was a teenager. I look, and how messed up were they? And later I found out they were in pornography and all kinds of stuff. How messed up were they sexually distorted to hurt a child?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like I look back on it different. I didn't forget, but I definitely look on it differently
Yeah.
than when it happened.
I'm glad that you're mentioning it, because I think a lot of people are like, well, now that this is over, move on with your life and forget. And it's like, it might be over, but it's not so easy to forget, because trauma rewires your brain.
Yeah.
And there can be triggers you don't even expect years later, whether it's a
Yep.
smell, whether it's something. And then you're kind
Mhm.
of taken back to that moment, and you can't turn off your brain like from remembering that. But people, for whatever reason, think that once it's done, you'll never remember it again. And if you do remember it, you're not healed and you haven't forgiven. And it's like, it's not how
Yeah,
that
that's a slippery slope. But I'll tell you
yeah.
this: my advice to anybody is tell your story with a purpose. If I share a detail, whether I'm posting on socials or posting here, it's to get a hold of the woman that's gone through that. It's to help. It's to ignite something in somebody that's reading that I know that will reach out to me, because they do, because I hear from them, and they want prayer and they want to be healed. Even though God's healed me and I'm delivered from it, and I'm full of joy and I love Him and love the Lord and want to see all those people in heaven. Totally do. I have a lot more in me besides that story.
Right.
So I try to tell the story with a purpose. Like if I'm invited on a podcast or I'm invited on a TV talk show, it's for a purpose and a plan, and for God to use it for His glory. And it goes back to community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you're not
You're
your
not
story.
alone.
Yep. You're not alone. You're not your story. You're not your trauma. There's so much more to
That's
you.
right. Right.
People need to not, when they hear people's stories, not, attribute it that, oh, that's their story. That's who they are. That's not all of who they are. They're not wearing
Yeah.
a scarlet letter.
Yeah.
They've
Yeah.
been
Yeah. There's just a
redeemed,
piece.
restored. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
just it's a piece of who you are. It's not all. I mean, there's so many different puzzle pieces.
What is
Yeah.
the importance of men speaking up for women?
I think it's very important that men speak up for women. I think that it's very powerful for a man to speak up for woman, especially on the topic of sexual abuse. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's highly credible, because there's been so many times that men degrade women
Mm-hmm.
and tear women down, and be the very men that said, you know what, Mary got, raped in the bar the other night. Well, what was she wearing? Who was she with? Was she drunk? Blah, blah, blah. You know, and a lot of times it's that stereotype man that will make it. And, I don't think they know the power of their words, especially if there's younger men around and they're saying stuff, they're planting seeds in these younger men. Well, maybe they do deserve it. Maybe if they weren't dressed like that, maybe you're planting a seed for that younger guy that's listening to you just spout off, not thinking about what you're saying. Uh, Planting a seed in this younger guy that's overhearing you, or even in your crowd, and kind of looks up to you. And now you're making him think it's okay. So
Mm-hmm.
what happens when I got to ask, what happens when that comes out of a man's mouth? Do you honestly believe? Because if that, then you're a potential, you could hurt some. I mean, if you truly believe that she could deserve it and she dressed the way and she's drunk and that, I could see why that happened to her.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you need to check yourself. So I think it's very important that men stand up for women that's been abused in that situation, and say, that's not right. Don't start Like my husband's a big advocate against pornography because he knows it can start there. You can start looking at a magazine. I don't even know if they look at magazines, but back in the day, it was a magazine, right? Playboy, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not promoting that. I'm just saying, I think that's what it was.
Right,
you know,
right.
I'm
Right.
not saying anybody go out there and do that, but you know, they start there.
Mm-hmm.
And now, I mean, you get a hunger for something like that, and you want to feed that hunger. I personally believe that when you start slow rolling in that, and then you just have to increase the hunger, and the appetite gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and pretty soon magazines, porn, none of it. Then you want to act on what you've been watching, no matter if a woman wants you to or not.
Yeah.
Whether you, this might even be getting a little deep, but you might be in a relationship with a woman, and you wanted her to start doing the things you've been watching on those shows or those sites or whatever you're looking, you know, and then so that can be damaging to a woman, thinking that she's not good enough. But I'm just saying the seed's been planted. I hope this is making sense, but the seed's been planted, and you just keep feeding that hunger, and then you go out and you end up, worst case scenario is raping a woman and acting out on all those things you've been watching and reading and looking through in magazines, or that you actually do it in your own relationships and sabotage your own relationship with that.
Even with listening to lyrics and songs, or some of the movies.
Yeah.
Some of the movies are very sexually violent. And just perverse and horrific, and
nothing the way God intended it to be.
No,
nothing.
If you're watching that and you're okay with watching something be portrayed like that,
right?
That I would say is a huge red flag of, you know, it goes beyond just an action-packed movie. I mean, watching something like that
it's disturbing on many levels.
It is.
It's why do we even put that in there? I mean, that's a whole nother podcast. I mean, why do we feel the need to put something so graphic and so terrible in a movie? Like,
to give people ideas. I know.
Yeah, I mean, why? To plant seeds of, you know, distorted sexual relationships. It's just, yeah. I feel like it all feeds that hunger.
Yeah.
Wherever you're getting it from, you want to be careful you're not feeding a hunger that could destroy you and somebody else.
Yeah.
I don't care what it is, whether it's alcohol, drugs, pornography, whatever.
Yeah, we definitely need to be very careful with what we're listening to and what we're watching.
Right.
Let's talk about the disconnect within society regarding how people view trafficked victims and rape victims. So many people have so much more compassion for trafficked victims because they think, well, like, they got kidnapped and they didn't choose this. Whereas, you know, like the rape victim, they blame, like, you did something to cause it. And I think we need to stop minimizing and stop dismissing acts of sexual violence and stop comparing.
Right.
Stop comparing.
Right. It's rape. It's rape.
Yeah.
This woman got raped. Those things that she has to deal with, all the I'm broken, I'm damaged, I'm hurt, I can't get clean, all the things that you deal with once you're raped, this woman over here is dealing with the same thing, and I hate it, and it's just terrible. You can't make it pretty. Just because she didn't get raped 100 times or 10 times in a day, she still got raped. And it's a horrific crime against women and children.
Yes. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the impact trauma and sexual violence has on women and children, especially with what happens to them in the aftermath. Because most people think it's like it happened one time, it was one act, and now, like, it's over. I don't think they realize everything we go through after the fact.
Oh gosh, there's so much. I remember right after I was molested when I was 11, I remember just taking a shower and just thinking, I will never be clean. Like, I can't scrub. I mean, I know people saw it in movies where the woman's in the shower. There's no movie that can show you really what that is. I mean, and not unless you've been through it, and God hope you've never have to go through it or been through it. But if you have, then you know. It's not like you can't get it off. It's like every time you get out, you feel like you're dirty. It's just, you feel you cannot get clean. No matter how hard you scrub, now how many showers you take, you cannot get clean. And that goes for the mind. So you think in the washing of the body, well, there's the mind. You completely have to, like, I'm 11, so I don't know how to wash the mind. I don't have to wash my mind with the word of God. I don't know Romans 12:2. I mean, do not conform to this world, to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. I don't know that scripture yet. I'm 12. Okay. But it was repeatedly over and over in my mind what I could have done different, wish I would have done different, how I could have handled that different. Even at 11, trying to figure out how could I have helped this from not happening, and the constant guilt that it did, and then I had a mom, which I absolutely adore my mom, loved my mom with all my heart. Best friend, last 22 years of her life, best friend. I loved her. We got along great. But I remember back then, I mean, she didn't even want me talking about it. I tried to talk about it. She goes, Michelle, it's just too painful. And I know it was painful for her because now you think, well, how can that be painful for your mom? Well, just think about it. If you're a mom and that happened to your child, there'd be a lot of guilt on you. And that would be painful to live, that you let your child go to this amusement park with two other kids that were 10 and 11, you know? It wasn't her fault, but she did feel bad about it. And so wasn't able to talk about it. And so again, the washing of the mind. So she tried to send me to a man psychiatrist. Well, I'm not going to talk to a man. So I just sat there and drew pictures. I'm not going to talk because I don't trust a man. I don't trust the police officer. The one person I thought I could trust was a man, and he hurt me horribly. So you live with that. If that happened to you when you're a child, you live with that until you become an adult, and then you try to figure out how to handle that. And I didn't. I started doing drugs. I started numbing my memories with drugs and with alcohol because it was too painful to feel what I felt. So I had to drink as much as I could drink so I wouldn't feel what I felt. So people don't see the aftermath, the rolling ball that happens after. And I'm not saying every woman has ever got raped turns into a person that drinks a lot and starts being hooked on drugs. But that's my story. That's what happened to me. I did not know how to handle it. And so I turned to drinking and alcohol and just tried to numb the memories and numb the pain, and until I met Jesus. But God, I met Jesus, and I stopped drinking, I stopped doing drugs, I started doing all the things, and He healed me and delivered me. But that was a journey. That was from 11 until I was 26. That was a long journey on trying to wash a mind that no soap or water could ever get to. You could wash your body and maybe feel clean for 2 seconds in the shower, but how do you wash your mind?
Yeah.
How do you get the soap and the sponge into your brain? It was hard.
And I think, in regards to that, when something like this happens to you, like if you're involved in an accident, there's usually like some type of like disconnection where like you can leave the accident site, like you're away from it. But when you're raped, your body's a crime scene and you can't escape it. And then you have flashbacks during the day and you have nightmares at night, and not all the time, but you can. But again, you can't escape from where the crime scene was because it's your body. And that is so hard.
It is so hard
to try to be processing what you're going through and still be very much tied to the crime scene 24/7.
And then you become the detective trying to figure out the crime, trying to figure what could I have done different? How could I? And I don't care if you're 11, if you're 16, 17, you just, and what's that yellow tape I know it's yellow, but what does it say?
Tape.
Yeah. So then you feel like you're wrapped all in this caution, don't get involved with me. Caution, I'm damaged. Caution, I'm broken. Caution, 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 and you're putting up these walls all around you because you're like, oh my gosh, who do I trust? How do I trust? It's huge. And I don't know how people do it outside of God. I don't even have an answer. I can't even tell you because I don't have that answer. I only did it with God. I don't have an alternative answer besides Jesus. And I seriously don't know how people, I don't know. I don't know how they get through it all.
I love that you are married and you have a family, and it's such an inspiration, especially to those that wonder if they'll ever have that after going through something horrific like sexual violence. Because I feel like in this day and age, it's so sexualized. And
Hmm.
men don't seem to understand that when you meet someone who has been through trauma like we have been through,
Right.
you need to make sure you're not crossing boundaries,
Hmm.
that you're treating her with respect, but you're also taking in consideration of, could this be triggering? Could this
Yeah.
conversation, could this joke? I had a conversation with a guy. I said, I'm thinking about Krav Maga, is the Israeli self-defense. But I know it's going to be triggering when I have to, like, there's different things that you have to do that you have to like fend off an attacker. And
Yeah.
that could be triggering for women just in general, but when you've dealt with sexual assault, it's going to be definitely triggering. And he was like, "Oh, I can practice with you." And I'm like, "Oh no, you cannot." And he's
Yeah.
like, "Why not?" And I said, "I'm going to be triggered. I can't have you
Be
playing
the
the
trigger.
part of the attacker."
No.
It, but in his mind, that didn't seem to make sense. And it's like, please think before you say, like, guys need to think before they say certain things, of just
They do.
like, some things you might think are okay, they're just really not appropriate. And then you have to take into consideration the trauma. And there has to be some level of Christ like sensitivity, of just really like being careful of what you're saying, because it can actually cause more harm. And I feel like people
True.
aren't
True.
doing that, Michelle. Like they're not,
Careful.
yeah, they're not.
They're not
And
careful.
it makes it harder for, I think, women to trust and get to know someone in the right setting. I know women can bloom, and I know women can
Yeah.
just work through this in the right setting, where someone's going to take their time, not rush, be patient, and go at her comfortable pace, but also take in consideration different things. I mean, I've known women to express fears, and guys have been dismissive, and it's like, wait a second, stop. I have this fear because of what I went through. I don't need you dismissing this fear. I don't need you
Yeah.
saying there's nothing to fear when you haven't walked through what I've walked through. Like, just
Right.
be a safe haven. And I feel like, unfortunately, we live in a culture where a lot of men don't know how to be, and aren't being the safe haven women need, where you can actually help women heal. You could actually
Right.
help them rather than causing more harm.
That's right. I agree. I agree. I would say to a lot of women, I didn't do this, so but I would definitely say to a lot of women that you need to have that honest conversation. If you're getting into a relationship, you need to sit down and say, "This is where I've been." A lot of women don't want to. They don't want, because they don't want to be marked, damaged, or broken, or whatever. Um, and if somebody does view you like that, they're not the one for you anyway. So you
Yeah.
might as well just get out in the open. This is what happened to me. This
Yeah.
is these things might be triggering to me. I will give you grace to understand and learn me and learn these triggers. But you need to know they're there. And I don't want you feeling like you have to walk through a what is it, a bomb, a mine, where all
Right.
these bombs are going on. I would never want a man to feel like that towards me, that he has to walk on eggshells around me all the
Right.
time. But definitely want to mention, these are some triggers that could trigger me due to this experience. I'm still healing, God's still restoring, and you can be a part of that journey if you want. If this is too much for you, I understand. I can't say I have a ton of triggers, and you would think I had a ton of triggers, just being held in a drug at house, and
Yeah.
held at gunshot, and one the drug addict dad, I remember him playing Russian roulette with me. Literally put a bullet in the gun, spin it around, and pointed it and shot it at my head over and over again. Spin it, but shot. You would think I had tons of triggers. I can't say there's none, but there's not a ton. But you do need to have that conversation. My husband didn't even know my story until I wrote my book, and we were married for, I don't know, 8 or 9 years. So Marty did not even know my story. So I'm not saying do what I did, but once he read the book, he goes, some things are starting to make some sense,
Yeah.
because he could read what I went through, because I didn't tell all there is to tell, and I've never told all there is to tell, because God has not given me permission, but I've told a lot of it. And
Yeah.
so when he read it, he was just crying. He was just bawling. I remember him coming downstairs in Tennessee, and he was just crying. He says, I did not know. So I would recommend that if you're in a relationship with someone, that you do tell them and have a good conversation with them. It could have saved us a lot of heartache for the first 8 to 10 years, that he did not know that about me. But yeah, I certainly wouldn't want any man to, like I said, to feel like he always had to walk around eggshells with me. But if you're not healed and you're still getting healed, that person you're dating needs to know that you want them to be a part of the healing if they choose to.
Yeah.
But if they can't, then it's best right out the gate,
Oh, 100%.
because they'll end up causing more harm to you
Yes.
than good. Yeah,
And if they can't handle it,
you want to know.
you want to know, but also the right person will be able to handle it. They're not the
Oh
right
yeah,
person, and
yeah,
like, don't think that then there's something wrong with you. It's out of the scope of their limitations. Like they just
yeah,
can't handle it. I will also say for the men, first of all, any woman, regardless of whether she's been through trauma or not, be careful with her heart. Be
hmm,
gentle, be tender. Like just
yeah,
be a good godly guy. If you're saying you're a godly guy, be that. Like really
yeah.
reflect the hands and feet of Jesus Christ.
And be careful. Let me just say this. Like, I lived some years, okay? And I know some things just by experience. Be careful who says I'm a godly guy.
Oh yeah.
It's almost like I come online anymore. It's
Yeah.
almost like this is a tagline. This is a
Yeah.
sure way to get my foot in,
Hmm.
or whatever. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So unfortunately, you can't always trust that. There's a
No.
reason you just courted with people around.
Yeah.
You dated in public, really, and you had parents there when you courted. And I mean, I'm not so much against it. There's just so much fraud going on
There is.
that, and especially, I mean, I'm not in the dating scene, so I don't want to give too much advice on this, because I'm not a fan of people giving me advice how to do something if they've never had to do it. I was on the dating scene, but not in this time and day. So,
Yeah.
um, but just from watching and listening to friends, just because they say they're a godly guy, you know, doesn't mean they're a godly guy.
Yeah. Make sure
Just
that
means they can actually say that sentence.
make sure that their words and actions align, and be very aware
Yeah,
of if you
yeah,
put a boundary in place, are they respecting it or are they
right.
crossing it? And if
Yeah,
they continue to cross it and they're not taking consideration or respecting your wishes,
yeah,
that's a huge red flag, because that's not the character of a godly guy. But for those guys that, you know, say you are a godly guy, really be that godly guy. And, when you meet someone who has gone through trauma, be careful with your words. Don't be careless.
hmm,
Because
hmm,
if you're hearing that they've been through trauma, they've been hurt,
hmm.
don't add more hurt by making promises you break, by saying things that you don't mean, by overly complimenting and being very loving and supportive, only to end up not being loving and supportive later. Like, don't put a woman through that's been through hell, because it just will hurt her heart and cause more harm to her. And that's not okay. Like, you really,
It's not.
really
No.
careful with her heart.
Yeah. And you know what? If we're just being honest, most women and men that go into relationships have been hurt or broken at one
Yeah.
point in their lives. No matter, I know people will come up after I speak at a conference and they'll say, I don't have a testimony like you. God protect me to this and this and this. And I said, you know what? The same grace that God protects you from going through it is the same grace that protected me from while I went through it. The
Yeah.
same grace. So it we're talking a lot about women, but there are men that have been abused. And
Mm-hmm.
so women also need to be careful
Oh,
how, and I just think I just think an honest conversation between two people before they date
yeah.
needs to happen. Can we
Yeah.
just get that out there? That
Yeah.
just needs to happen. I mean, yes, you need to be attracted to him, all that. Put all it aside. Sit down and have a conversation. Have a
Mm-hmm.
cup of coffee, have a conversation. Find out where he's from, where he's been. I mean, dig deep, especially when you get a little older. You're not looking just to date around.
No.
A lot of women and men are looking for a long time partner. And so cut out all the other bull and
Mm-hmm.
just sit down and have a conversation at a public place where you can feel safe and they can feel safe, and share about your life. And you'll know before you leave that table if this is potential,
Yeah.
or if it's not, then say bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye, because you'll know. You'll hear his heart. You'll see where he's come from. He'll do the same with you. He'll know, hey, am I going to be able to walk through this healing journey with her? She's clearly not completely healed yet. So am I equipped? Is my heart in it? And do I want to help this woman? And no, maybe he won't know the first date. Maybe you have a second cup of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, have these conversations,
Yeah.
not just go in these relationships blindly and then expect the men or the women to figure you out on the way.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's what I did to my husband. I didn't tell him nothing. I mean, I tell him a couple of things. I'm like, figure it out on your own, you know? And that's partly because I wasn't healed enough to even talk about it. I mean, I did write the book, but I just had a hard time sharing that with him. I don't know.
Yeah. So we talked about healing and restoration being possible. And my
Yeah.
final question is there beauty for ashes for sexual assault victims and abuse victims and survivors?
Yes, 100%. There's 100% beauty for ashes. Yes, 100%. There's There's always hope in Jesus, period. There's always hope in Jesus. No matter what you've been through, there's always hope in Jesus, and he can heal and restore. I'm not saying you shouldn't go talk to somebody. That was not my journey. My journey was I got a hold of the word. I let God get in my heart. I let him heal me and touch me. I'm not saying that counseling is not valuable and that you shouldn't do it. What
Yeah.
I'm saying, it wasn't my journey. God healed me, but I hear more now than I ever had. That's usually not the norm. Normally you do need to have some kind of counseling or something to get through that. And I say pray to God, ask him what direction you go in to get healed, because that's the important part. Not really that you have another relationship or that you find a mate or you do that. I would say the most important part of your walk, if you're a single woman that's been abused in any way, is for you to get whole.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, get whole. Get whole, get healthy, get happy, get joy, get Jesus, get it all. Because, yeah, there is beauty for ashes, for sure.
I love that. I want to thank Michele for taking time to have this powerful conversation with me.
Yes,
I know the
welcome.
things we talked about will inspire and give others so much hope. I'd also like to encourage the
Thank you for
viewers and
speaking.
listeners to find community that you can walk
Yes,
through the highs and lows of life with, because we were created to be in community and life
yes,
is better together.
amen.
Until next time.